Welcome to the Idaho Business Podcast, the only Idaho podcast focused on providing profits for Idaho people. If you love our state and love small business, you are in the right place. We interview local legends, learn business, and have way too much fun doing it. You're listening to the Idaho Business Podcast with your friend, host, and all-around great guy and owner of New Clean Commercial Cleaning, Spencer Ward.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Idaho Business Podcast. We are here with Tim Francis. We're excited to have him. He's a guest that I've been trying to get for a while because he's changed my life. I'm telling you right now, people. Tim Francis is the founder of greatassistant.com. He and his team have helped over 800 entrepreneurs get a trusted, high-level domestic executive assistant. Tim's appeared on the websites of Forbes, Inc. magazine, has been a guest lecturer at Yale, NYU, and University of Texas. Tim lives in Austin, Texas, so he's not an Idaho guy, but he is changing Idaho in his life. So I'm telling you, me being one of them. And regularly publishes his newsletter at truthandmastery.com. So welcome, Tim, to the show. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much. And I'm proud to say on my team, I have one team member who is from Idaho. So there you go. We're supporting Idaho directly.
There you go. There you go. I love it. So, Tim, you're the founder, the CEO of, greatassistant.com. I've used you guys. I currently have a great assistant and she is fantastic. She's taken so much off my plate. And we've talked about VAs and in general on this podcast in the past. But I would like to just turn the time over to you and help this audience see what they're missing when it comes down to, being more effective with their time and getting more done during their days.
I failed with my first 5 assistants. Always the overachiever, right? 5 in a row. And I had this moment where I looked in the mirror and it dawned on me that, like a person who gets divorced 5 times, that maybe I had something to do with it, right? So I stepped in the shower and I get a lot of really great ideas in the shower. I don't intend it to happen. It just floats into my brain. So this absurd question floats into my mind. One of the most absurd questions I've ever had, and yet it changed my life. The question was, if I was legally bound to keeping my next assistant for 3 years, not allowed to fire them, not allowed to reassign them, got to keep them as my assistant for 3 years, what would I do differently? For the next few days, I kept notes, and there was probably about 25, 30 items I came up with. I was like, well, I wouldn't hire the first person who applies. I probably wouldn't hire overseas if I have to stay with them for 3 years. I probably would look at dozens, if not hundreds of candidates. I'd probably build a hiring funnel where I have multiple work tests, multiple interviews. I would really make it kind of jumping through a lot of hoops. And so this list ends up being about 25 items. Then after that, I felt kind of guilty. The personal development nerd inside of me was like, well, that's such a negative question if I'm stuck with them for 3 years. So I flipped the question around 180 degrees. And I said, what if I get to be with them for 3 years? What if it actually works out? Holy smokes, right? And I was like, well, if I know they're going to stay and they're not going to leave, and I know that we're going to get along, and I know they're going to pick it up quick, and well, goodness gracious, I would want to get to know them as people. What's the name of their dog and their cats and kids and spouse? And I'd give them a great onboarding experience. So they would have a really amazing kind of first impression with me. We could both get early wins. I would be a patient coach. I'd be a thoughtful delegator. So I just kept going down the list. There's about 25, 30 items there as well. So then, Spencer, it hits me. I push back from my desk and I burst out laughing because I hadn't done a single thing from either of those lists with any of my first 5 assistants. Eureka. It dawned on me that first list of 25 items, the stuck with list, if I'm stuck with my assistant for 3 years, that actually became a really good hiring method. And it really raised the bar on who I hired as an assistant. And then I looked at the second list. That was my get to list. If I get to be with an assistant for 3 years, and I was it dawned on me that's a really good leadership list, right? Get to know them as people, never miss a weekly alignment meeting, be a patient coach, all that. And so it actually really caused me to raise the bar in how I led and delegated an assistant. It hit me many years ago that I could pedal the bike faster and faster and faster if I wanted to, up to a point. I came from the world of if it's to be, it's up to me. Both my parents grew up on farms. I was a college athlete. Of course, I played hockey growing up in Canada. I now live in Texas, as you mentioned. I was a college athlete, not in hockey, but actually volleyball. Football is not as big in Canada, so there's more money for other sports. And so men's volleyball in college is a thing. So I was a college athlete, and it's all about hustle. First in the gym, last out, that's me. I literally had a crippling illness, though. In 2010, three things happened that would change my life forever. First, I lost $250,000 in the 2008 real estate crash. In Canada, it happened a little bit later. It was kind of like 2009, 2010. I didn't just want to get rich, though. I also wanted to be famous. So I was a touring drummer at the time. My band had played 150 shows. We had airplay on radio. We had sponsors, kind of all the things. And we broke up 20 minutes before going on stage at the Western Canadian Music Awards. Oops. So we still played the show. However, it was one of the most surreal experiences. It was like being in an aquarium where I could see out, but I couldn't hear anything, and everything just felt slow motion. And then also in that same 18-month period, not only did I lose the money and have to go back to investors and have very difficult conversations, not only did I lose the band, but it turns out that my top mentor, who I completely believed in, turns out he was the leader of lead promoter of a $12 million Ponzi scheme. His partner got convicted in court, barred from holding securities for 25 years. It was out of the movies. So all three of those things happened. I was working like a maniac just to try and kind of rub two pennies together because I was so broke at that point. So we've got 80-hour work weeks multiplied by 11 out of 10 stress, and I developed an illness. On December 26, 2010, I went to pick up my parents. I went to their house to pick up my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister. I wanted to be the good son. I wanted to take them shopping to West Edmonton Mall on Boxing Day, which in Canada is even bigger than Black Friday. And West Edmonton Mall is bigger than the Mall of America. It's over 800 stores. It's a massive place. So it's really kind of a Christmas miracle if you can find a parking spot on Boxing Day. It's not going to happen. So being the good son, I wanted to pick up my family, drop them off at the entrance, and I'll circle for 45 minutes looking for a parking spot while they can enjoy some shopping. As I walked into my mom and dad's house, my mom noticed I had a bit of a limp. She said, "Honey, let's take a look at your ankle." So I rolled up my pant leg. It suddenly it's like I'd rolled it playing sports. It was so puffy. Very, very, very puffy. So then we rolled up the other leg and it was also puffy. And I was just as shocked as my mom to see it because it wasn't like that the day before. 5 days later, the swelling had gone from my ankles to my knees to my hips through my whole body. And my mom was like, "We got to go to the doctor." So we go to 3 different doctors on January 2nd or 3rd of 2011. And all 3 doctors were shocked. They said, "This is an unbelievably rare illness. We've never seen this before." Oh, I'm sorry, they'd seen it before, but only like 2 or 3 times in their entire careers. And these are doctors that have been at it for 20, 30 years. They said, "I think this is erythema nodosum." Now, I'd never heard of it before. If no one's ever heard of it, I wouldn't be surprised because it's so rare. 50% of all cases, no one knows why it happens, but it's probably stress related. There's no timeline for recovery. There's no medication. There's no physical therapy. You just lay in bed and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait. So I had to move back to my parents for full-time care. I was $250,000 in debt, had no way to pay any of it off. Had my mom not paid my mortgage for me for 3 years, I would have gone double bankrupt. From there, my days were basically just this like super roller coaster. Some days I felt so embarrassed for failing at everything. Every one of my greatest fears had come true. I'd lost the money, the band, the houses. I had actually 3 or 4 houses at the time. I'd lost it all. And then I also felt deeply resentful. I felt like, how could my mentor do this to me? How could my band break up? Like I felt resentful. And then there was just days of deep hopelessness, days where I was like, there is no road back from this. I can't walk. I can't work. I have no way to make money. And I have to cover $250,000 worth of debt. Spencer, had it not been for the love and unconditional care of my parents, I literally do not know where I'd be today. So it was a low, February of 2011. So second month of my recovery, actually exactly 14 years ago to this day and month that you and I are recording this. I woke up one day, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, and suddenly I felt a warmth in my body. And I heard a voice. And this voice said, "Is this really what you want?" And I don't know if a moment went by, if it was a minute, if it was an hour, because time stood totally still. And then I heard another voice. The voice was small. It was incredibly weak. And the voice was buried deep in my soul. It was, however, very, very clear. And it said yes. As soon as I said yes, this cascade of realizations flooded through me. I realized that I'd been chasing fame and fortune through rock and roll and real estate when what I needed to be chasing was truth and mastery. Even if I was never rich, never famous, if all I got to do was get 1% better at entrepreneurship with every week that goes by, that would be a life well lived. The day I met the divine is the day that I believe I started to heal. But 6 weeks after that, I could walk again. But now I had a new challenge. I had $250,000 of debt to pay off and no business. So I started just learning some skills as I could in marketing and sales. And I just looked around to the entrepreneurs that were in my world. Incredibly, my dad, who owned a trucking school, he hired me to do Google AdWords for his business. It was a very, very modest beginning. I can thank him to the end of the earth and back for giving me that opportunity to start getting some traction. Then there was like a local real estate investor and a few other people said like, "Oh yeah, for $100 a month or $200 a month, sure, you can help promote my business." All in 2011, I made $28,000, not per month. That was the entirety of my income in 2011 was $28,000. So I was starting to make money. I'm at least covering interest payments. My only success metric at that point was how many days in a row can I go without having to ask my mom for money? That was like literally my success metric. Keep in mind, former varsity athlete, used to be touring, used to have multiple properties, like super glamorous, all the things. And now I'm just trying to not borrow money from my mom. So business is starting to grow. I'm relieved I can actually rub two pennies together. I can cover my mortgage, but now I have a new problem. My day is getting busier and busier and busier. I've got more and more clients coming in. They need support, customer support, tech support. I have this little digital marketing agency that's coming to life. And all of a sudden, I'm spending so much time on like administration and operations. It's actually stopping me from getting out and actually learning to get more customers and networking and talking to important partners and doing things like speaking and all the things that I knew would help grow my business. But then I realized I tried getting assistance before and I had not been particularly good at it. And that led to that moment staring in the mirror, realizing I'd failed at getting 5 assistants. I was still $250,000 in debt, barely scraping by making $28,000 a year, but I could not afford to get it wrong a 6th time. So everything I shared with you about the 2 lists, the 3-year question, if I were to be with my next assistant for 3 years, what would I do differently? That all kicked into place. And it was the first time that I finally stepped up as a leader to lead the right way. And I finally stepped up and invested effectively into the right kind of assistant. I found a woman named Sarah in Kokomo, Indiana. Now, here's the craziest thing. I looked at over 200 candidates. She was the winning candidate of 200. She had never been an assistant before. She'd never worked in a marketing company before, which is what I had. And she'd never worked online before. By any stretch of the imagination, she was completely unqualified. But then it dawned on me that, hey, my hiring instincts on the first 5 assistants was not particularly sharp. So maybe I'll try something different. So I hired Sarah because she was a higher level assistant and I was leading at a higher level as well. Within 1 week, she was already taking things off my plate. Within the first year, she'd taken over my inbox, my calendar, customer service, travel planning, event planning. It just went on and on and on and on and on. And my income went from 28 grand to $107,000 in 1 year. And by the end of the fourth or fifth year of working with Sarah, I think I'd made $657,000, something like that. It was like just remarkable that this new way of hiring and this new way of leading repeated, sticking with that game plan. What it did is it freed me up. So a couple of things to think about. Number one, when hiring an assistant, it's actually a very different hire than any other hire a person is going to make in their business. If I owned a cleaning company or I owned an HVAC company, you betcha I want a narrow and deep hire. If I'm hiring an HVAC technician, they had better know the difference between the Lennox and the Carrier, and they'd better know the different amperages and watts of electrical panels and all the rest. They had better have a narrow and deep knowledge. And if they don't know how to market the business, no problem. That's not their job, right? Narrow and deep, narrow and deep. Right. Everybody in our business. An assistant is actually 90 degrees different. It's not a narrow and deep hire. It's a shallow but broad hire. I need an assistant who is going to take over the bottom simple, repeatable parts of anything that I touch. Up until my illness, I thought that my money, my houses, my customers, my credit, my business, all of that, I thought that those were my most important assets. Well, guess what? I lost every single one of those, Spencer. I lost every asset you could see on a balance sheet. I had lost it all. I had this crazy moment after I'd recovered, though, where it dawned on me that I'd lost everything, and yet I wasn't dead. I'm still here. So then what's the most important asset? The most important asset is me. That's right. And so anything that I touch, I need my assistant to take over the bottom 20%, 30%, 40% of that, almost like an operating room. So in an operating room, we have the surgeon, we have nurses, we have phlebotomists, we have operating room managers, just all these different people that are involved in surgery. I want an entrepreneur to be focused on being the surgeon in the room. I don't want them to be doing paperwork. I don't want them to be setting up the room and getting supplies. In fact, when a surgeon enters the room, the patient had better already be on the table, already gowned up, all the paperwork's done, all the supplies are there, so the surgeon can just roll in, wash their hands, gown up, perform the procedure, and then leave. And then off to the next surgery room, same thing there, and their whole day should just be surgery room, surgery room, surgery room. So my assistant is the one who sets me up every single hour of the day so that I can roll in and be the surgeon in the room. And so to unpack that just a little bit, what does it mean to be the surgeon in the room? There's three things that a surgeon does, and it's the same three things us business owners need to be doing and nothing else. The first is what's called strategy. So just like the surgeon diagnoses the problem and says, okay, here's the injury or the illness and here's the procedure, we as entrepreneurs need to be the strategists. Okay, how are we going to get customers? How are we going to staff our team? How are we going to do customer service? I mean, what's our unique process to do what we do? That's all strategy. And that is not to be delegated to an assistant. Too often I've seen entrepreneurs say, oh, I want to start a podcast. So I'm going to buy a podcast course, hire an assistant and tell the assistant to go do the podcast course and they can figure it out. It's like, no. That's exactly backwards. Your assistant should be taking over your day-to-day, like your inbox, your calendar and billing and what your assistant should take that over from your day-to-day. So now you can go figure out how to do the podcast. You're the Indiana Jones that goes out to find the treasure fuel. So strategy is the first part that I want entrepreneurs to keep. High level skills. So just like the surgeon is the one that makes the incision and performs the procedure, there are many high level skill items that entrepreneurs do. Selling, negotiating, being on podcasts like this. So we want to keep that. And the third thing an entrepreneur does or a surgeon does that an entrepreneur should do is high level access. So only the surgeon has access to their medical license to sign off on certain documents, to perform certain procedures. A surgeon, though, is also the only person who has high-level access to other surgeons to be able to say, oh, hey, I've got a tricky situation. Can we get together for coffee, look at this x-ray, give me your opinion, right? And surgeons can do that with each other. If the janitor tried to text the surgeon of the neighboring hospital, probably not going to happen, but the surgeons know the surgeons. So, it's not like I just woke up one day and all I was doing was just surgeon in the room activity. It was a dimmer switch that over time I got more and more off my plate that was non-surgeon in the room work. And then from there, that freed me up to do more and more surgeon in the room work. So overall, I'd say that's how I've arrived here. We've since helped over 800 entrepreneurs to learn our delegation method. This is part of what I taught at Yale, as you mentioned. And it's really, last thing I'll say to this before I pass it back to you is just like, I grew up as such an athlete-minded, again, my parents grew up on farms, and it was all about working hard. And I believe working hard is important. At some point, though, we can only pedal the bike so fast. And if you think about pedaling a bike, what's the winning strategy there? The winning strategy is pushing the pedals, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, as fast as you can. At some point, we max out what that bicycle can do for us in terms of speed, comfort, distance, et cetera, et cetera. We actually just have to change vehicles. Now, here's the thing. If you go to a car, you're going to go further, faster, more comfortably, less effort, and with greater style. However, if you bring the winning strategy of pushing the pedals right, left, right, left, right, left from your bike mind, and you step into a car and you push the pedals right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, you're going to damage the vehicle. You're going to give yourself whiplash, and you're not going to get anywhere. So there's literally in our heads and our belief system as entrepreneurs, a fundamental software upgrade that needs to happen when, as soon as we stop saying it has to be, if it's to be, it's up to me, and moving from the self solution to the team solution. There's this great African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love it. I love it. From experience, like I've had failed VAs in the past, and I've always, I kind of went through a similar process for you, not as dramatic as you, but thinking, man, I just need someone to help. And then they would fall out and they would leave. And then when I finally came to you guys, the great assistant, and you guys matched me with someone who just compliments me, is my yin to my yang, it's just been life-changing. Because just for example, the other day, I'm like, hey, let's change phone systems. I would love to find a phone system that maybe has some AI features to it. Boom. She had a comparative document, spreadsheet showing comparative information of different phone systems. I said, yeah, let's go with this one. Within a week, everything was switched over between two different companies. Switched over. I didn't do a dang thing. And meanwhile, like you said, I was being the surgeon. I was going out, getting bids, doing, converting those into sales, while the phone system was taking care of itself. And that's the, if you guys are listening, this is what Tim's talking about. Like this, I know you all have things you're dealing with that you wish you were the surgeon in the room, and you're not right now. And you need to be that surgeon, and you need to bring someone on board to help you be that surgeon. Did I get it all
Outstanding.
right?
Yeah, you sure did. And I think it's like, so there's a tool I invented called 360 delegation, that if an entrepreneur wants to play and just experiment with what it means to lead the work rather than do the work, I'll teach that in just a moment. To tee this up, everyone's heard of the 80-20 rule, right? So 80% of our results comes from 20% of our effort. Life is not 50-50. It's not all even. It's like 80% of family members cause us 20% of stress. You know what I mean? 80% of friends bring us 20% of joy. 80% of roads carry 20% of traffic. 80% of money is held by less than 20% of people. And so is true of our work. So of the results that we produce on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis in a career, it's less than 20% of what we do that actually creates 80% or more of the impact we make for our customers, the income that we make for ourselves, the way that we can provide for everyone around us, including our team. It's actually less than 20% of our effort and energy and time that generates the big difference. Now, there's a very interesting variation on 80-20. It's actually called hourglass. A friend and fellow entrepreneur, Mike Rhodes, taught this to me. An hourglass is 10-80-10. So it's the same 80-20, but it's actually 10 first and then middle 80 and then last 10. So what that says, I've added to the model to say it's lead, do, review. So the first 10% of any task, project, business, campaign, product we're inventing, whatever, the first 10% of what we want to get done is leading the work. 360 delegation is the tool that allows you to lead the work. Then the middle 80% is when the work actually gets done. And then the last 10% is us reviewing the work to see how did it go? What modifications do we need? Do we need to pivot and try something different or pursue because it worked, right? So this 10-80-10 reveals something else. The first 10% is actually very difficult. It requires us as leaders to kind of define and design what it is we want done. So, for you, Spencer, as you're handing off this phone system, you probably had some sense of like, is this for 10,000 employees or is this for like less than 100? Are we looking to spend $10,000 or are we looking for less than $1,000 a month? Are we looking for everyone to have their own phone number, or is this something where it's one central phone number with extensions? Like, you probably had some element of defining and designing what you want that all to look like. Because if you just say, hey, go get me a new phone system, and assistant be like, okay. And they would go on Google and they'd be so overloaded with 800 options that it wouldn't be all that productive. Instead, you take a couple minutes. Our 360 delegation tool is perfect for this. It walks you through a series of questions so you can define and design what it is that you want done. And then from there, now you can hand it off and say, we're looking for less than $1,000 a month. Everyone's got their own number. I want it to be compatible with iPhone and Android, like whatever it is.
Yeah. That
is now your part complete. Now the the first 10% is hard. It requires thinking. It's not always the most fun part, but it is our job. Then the middle 80% of any task, that is for teammates to do, quite possibly an assistant, depending on what the situation is. And it's not as difficult, like the intellectual, impact, the amount of experience a person needs to do the middle 80%, the amount of authorizations they need, the amount of money they need is way less than that first 10%. Like, I took this model into actually, believe it or not, hosting dinner parties. And I was like, I'm a dude. I don't know how to design my apartment nicely to make it look good for people to come and have dinner, right? But so in the first 10% of that, I actually hired a designer to come in and say, oh, you need these chairs, these forks, these knives, like et cetera, et cetera. She was the surgeon in the room because I wasn't a surgeon in the room in my own home on my own project. So someone somewhere has got to be the surgeon in the room. And so in that case, I brought her in. Same thing with diet planning. I'm not a registered dietitian. So for whatever, $100, $150 an hour, I hired a surgeon to come into the room, help me design what do I want my calories and macros to look like. And that's the first 10%. Then the middle 80%, which is ordering the meals, with, we use Snap Kitchen in Austin, but like Factor 75 or Factor is another meal delivery service. Every now and then they have food that doesn't arrive at the proper door, or the credit card doesn't process properly or something like that. There's like customer service to be dealt with. And then there's like, hey, I'm going to be traveling, so we should get fewer meals, or hey, my dad's in town, so we should have more meals. All of that's the middle 80%. And there's no like ultra rocket science there, but it does require caring attention to detail to make sure that the food arrives at my door, or else I'm not going to be able to eat. And so that middle 80%, attention to detail, instinct to close loops, making things organized, that's my assistant that does the middle 80%. It's a lot longer in terms of hours of work, but let's say the difficulty of the decisions, I've already cleared that out. I've de-risked the project because I put my head on it in the first 10%. And then after she's completed the middle 80%, then the last 10% is for me to get with my assistant and say, okay, how did that go? Was that dinner party good? Was that meal delivery good? Was that podcast upload good? What do we like? What do we like? What do we want to change? And what would you do different next time? So that's the 10-80-10. And I would say one of the greatest difficulties we as entrepreneurs have, my former self included, is being able to unpack a project into the smaller pieces to realize what can be delegated. So something like email marketing, it's like, well, I could never delegate that because my assistant doesn't know how to write persuasively an email, right? Or my assistant doesn't have all the like connections that I do to get guests to come into a podcast or something like that. Okay, let's go back to email marketing. Well, if I unpack that and I'm like, okay, well, what is the surgeon in the room part of email marketing? Well, there's picking who's going to receive it. Is it all of our past customers? Is it just our prospects? Like, is this a promotion, or is this just an update from, New Clean or Great Assistant or whoever? Like,
Sure.
what is this? So I define that in terms of strategy. I figure out how often we're going to do the newsletter, who's going to receive it. Then I do the high level skill of actually writing the newsletter. And that's the surgeon in the room work. And then from there, I can hand it to my assistant. And now my assistant can do uploading to our CRM. That's not surgeon in the room.
Yep.
My assistant can be the one to fight with the WYSIWYG editor. It's like you try and bold something and then it gets unbolded, and you try to link something and then the link breaks. And so she can fight with all that. And then she can send a test email to herself to see if it actually worked. And she can make sure that the URLs link through to the proper destination web pages. And she can do all that. And that's her part of the deal. So then from there, first few times I'll probably evaluate the work just to double check it before it goes live. But after that, she can just rock and roll. And then like now I'm getting emails written by me, but somehow got sent by some magical person called my executive assistant. And now I'm reviewing the work and say, yeah, that actually looks amazing. Or actually we need to adjust this thing or that thing. So
Yeah.
To me, unpacking is a big part of it. Would you like me to show an AI tool around 360 delegation, or is there something else you wanted to add there?
No, I think that's great. I think the only thing I would add is I think I've been guilty of it in the past, and I probably still get a little too antsy on when I delegate things and I forget to use the 365 method. But just as these other listeners listening, is sometimes I think we delegate and it's like, hey, go figure this out. And we're upset with the results that come back when we give no guidance. And this is where the 365 delegation comes in and works perfectly to make both sides end up with a win-win solution.
It'd be kind of like your wife saying, go to the grocery store and get groceries.
It doesn't work out well.
No. And then you find out later that she wanted the ranch dressing that you didn't get. But even if you did get the ranch dressing, she wanted the light version from Hidden Valley.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And you bought the wrong size because she wanted the family size, but you got the little one, because you guys have a family event coming up. I mean, go to the grocery store and get groceries. What is that? It's not helpful, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's the same
right.
thing. If you were to say to an assistant, hey, here's my username and password, take over my inbox, or hey, book my trip to Austin. I'm going to go hang with Tim in Austin. It's not helpful, right? It's a start, but management by abdication, which is what that is not the same as management by delegation.
Mm-hmm.
And to properly manage by delegation means to say, what is the vision I'm looking to get done? What are the resources I think are required? And what's the definition of done? Which are the component parts of 360 delegation.
Totally agree.
Okay. So Spencer, I'm going to show you, and I'll talk through this for anyone listening audio only. I'll talk you through this. This is our 360 delegation tool. And I'm going to show you an AI version, which Spencer, you may not have even seen this because this is like new-ish. So it's going to speed up how fast you can do. Yeah, proper delegation. Okay, so first things first, I'm sharing my screen here in 3, 2, and 1. Anybody listening at home or watching can go to greatassistant.com/3 steps. And right here, this is 3 steps to effective delegation is what we see on the screen. Interestingly, we surveyed 149 entrepreneurs and we asked them, what's your single biggest frustration or roadblock to getting a great assistant? 98.7%. So nearly every single entrepreneur we surveyed, 149 entrepreneurs, had one or many of the following concerns. I don't know how to release control or trust an assistant. I don't know what to pay them or how to make them profitable. I don't want to take the time to train them. I don't want to take the time to manage them. I don't know where to find a great assistant, and I don't know what to delegate. Now, incredibly, essentially half of everyone had the same issue of control and trust. So of 149 entrepreneurs, literally 50% said, I don't know how to let go of control. I don't know how to trust an assistant. Well, look, if you're just going to hire an assistant and throw them in the deep end, of course, you're going to be nervous about their performance. However, if you're thoughtful about the tasks that you delegate, which you're going to see something called the 7 yes test, which will help you with that. You'll see that on the screen in just a moment. If you're picking tasks that are simple to teach, simple to learn, you're already doing them in your business, so you know how to coach them and you know how to evaluate if the work's good or not. Right? If it's a non-critical task, it's a task that's not going to sink your business if misperformed, right? All of these pieces. So if it's a well-selected task, 7 yes test helps you with that. And then after that, it's delegated professionally with 360 delegation. All of a sudden, the risk profile on that is way lower. I feel way more comfortable saying to my assistant, can you book this trip for me? If I've told them I prefer Hyatt and Marriott and I don't want Hilton. If it's going to be Airbnb, it's got to be the whole place, not just a room with strangers on the other side of the wall. My budget is $150 to $250 a night. Like, now that I've given these parameters, the odds of this being successful are exponentially higher. And therefore that allows me to relax and feel more comfortable with delegating. Okay. So this, on the screen, it's at greatassistant.com/3 steps. And it is the number 3 and then the word steps with an S at the end. The first step, if you want to figure out how to get your time back, is you start with the time study. On the screen, there's a big red button. You can download a time study spreadsheet that is free to download. That'll get a sense of where's your time actually going. So you'll do that for a few days. That'll give you a good sense of where your time is going. Then once you've done that for 2 or 3 days, you do what's called the 7 yes test. So you look at the tasks on your time study and you ask the 7 questions that are on the screen here. So is this task a $10 to $20 an hour task? Does it happen at least once per week? Is there room for error? Can one rep be completed in 20 to 60 minutes? Does it require you to create minimal training? Does it require your assistant to learn as little as possible? Are you already doing it? This is not the same 7 questions you'll use for your whole career, but when getting started with an assistant, these 7 questions reveal very quickly what is a good task to delegate. And sequence matters. If I take a shower, put on a tuxedo, I'm Timothy Bond. If I put on a tuxedo and then I take a shower, I'm a hot mess. So the order of what you delegate matters as much as what you delegate in the first place. Okay. So this will help you find the lowest hanging fruit. Once you've identified a really low hanging fruit, kind of 3 to 5 tasks, now we want to use 360 delegation. So on the screen, we see there's 3 parts of 360 delegation. So what it is, it's a framework. It's like a mental framework, kind of a mental checklist of things to talk about when you're delegating to an assistant. And actually for anyone, in fact, it's getting good at delegating to my assistant that got me good at delegating to everyone on my team. So this is an amazing tool that goes far beyond just an assistant. So the 3 parts in our framework are: 1, what's the vision? So what is it that I want to get accomplished? When do I want it done by? When are we starting? Are there milestones along the way? What's the drop dead deadline? This is a super pro tip, is when you're describing the vision, is show a sample of success, or an SOS. Show a sample of whatever it is you want done already having been done. So if you want a invoice sent, and that's what you're handing, that's the task you're delegating to your assistant, show them a successful invoice. If you want them to upload your podcast episodes for you, show them a successfully uploaded podcast. It's like the box top to a puzzle so they can see what they're going for. Okay. So that's part 1 is vision. Part 2 is resources. Think through, what resources is your assistant likely going to need to be successful? Do they need usernames and passwords? Do they need keys to a building? Do they need money? Do they need a credit card? Do they need skills? Do they need to be trained on something? Do they need some kind of decision-making guidelines? Like, hey, I don't care which hotel you get for me, but it's got to be 150 to 250 a night. It's got to be within 10 minutes of my destination. Those are examples of decision-making guidelines. Is there itineraries that they need to know about? There's a whole checklist here on this blog post. So that's resources. The third of 3 parts that we need is what's called definition of done. A short way to think about this is, what are the user stories that have to be true? So if I'm traveling, as Tim, the traveler, I want to log into my Google Calendar. I want to click on one entry and I want my whole travel dossier to be there. Confirmation code for flight, confirmation code for hotel, confirming if I'm going to be ground transportation with Uber or taking a train or whatever. That's a user story. Secondly, I want to be able to arrive at my Airbnb or hotel and the groceries that I want for my morning smoothies are already in the fridge before I even get there. And that's now how I roll. So user stories, that's what that means. Great way, a shortcut to think about definition of done. Okay, so on the screen at greatassistant.com/3 and then the word steps, 3 steps, is the full explanation. The shortcut that Spencer, I think, might be news for you because this is relatively new, is if you go to 360dwriter.com, so the number 360, the letter D, W for writer, WRITER.com, you'll see that will automatically forward you to a ChatGPT, custom GPT that I've created. Now, to use this, you do have to have a paid subscription to ChatGPT. And on the screen, you can see it says 360 Delegation Writer by greatassistant.com. So Spencer, if I wanted to delegate booking a hotel room, I can write book hotel room. That's it. 3 words. Watch what happens. It's literally writing the whole 360D format.
Gosh.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
So for anyone listening and you can't see the screen, it literally is writing vision. The objective is to book a hotel room that meets the specified preferences and budget, ensuring a smooth and comfortable stay for the traveler. Key requirements: location, check-in date, checkout date, number of guests, room type, budget, amenities required, special requests. And so Spencer, you can see that it's prompting you in all the things that your assistant is going to end up bumping into and is going to have to ask you questions about. So you can just preemptively say, oh, the location is within 10 minutes of the JW Marriott downtown Austin. I want to check in on this date, February the 28th. I want to check out on March the 2nd. It's me and my wife traveling. You know, we prefer 1 king, not 2 queens, 150 to 250 a night. I need Wi-Fi. Couldn't care less if there's a gym I'm not working at while I'm on this trip. Like, right. And so you can put that in. There's even the samples of success. It's prompting you to attach a successful itinerary of the past, like how you like to have all of your travel information packaged together in one document for you. Then, so that's the vision part. Then it goes into resources. So it needs your name, how you paying, if you're on a loyalty program like, you know, Bonvoy by Marriott or Hilton Rewards Honors program. Do you prefer if an assistant uses booking.com, or do you want them to book directly into the Marriott website so you can get World of Hyatt points? Then the definition of done. What are the user stories as the traveler? I want to receive a booking confirmation. I want all my special requests like a late check-in or late checkout to be confirmed at the hotel, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just going to quickly here, Spencer, I'm going to write, I'm going to answer a couple of questions here. So budget is 150 to 250 per night. I'm also going to put that I want to be within a 10-minute Uber or closer of the JW Marriott downtown Austin. It's me and my wife traveling and 1 king bed, please. And I could keep going. As you saw on the screen that there was, you know, maybe like 10, 15 things to answer. Now, here's the thing. Those 10 or 15 items, those are the exact items your assistant would have to stop what they're doing and ask you for help with.
Yep.
So this is like an ounce of prevention is worth 10 pounds of cure. We say 360D is the 5 minutes that saves you 5 hours down the road. Okay. So as you can see in ChatGPT, I've added a couple of the items. We would obviously go through all of them to get them done, but it's now actually going to rewrite the 360 delegation. See, it literally says book a comfortable and well-received hotel room for you and your wife, right?
Wow.
And it's already picking up in the 360 delegation all the details that we just added. So, and then at the very end, once it's finished writing and, you know, we've kind of chatted back and forth a little bit, it asks you this very interesting question at the very, very end. It says, would you like me, ChatGPT, to ask you questions to refine it further? And so you can literally say, ask me questions, because what we really want to do is we just want to smoke out any of the curveballs that your assistant's going to bump into. So again, you can prevent that from even happening in the first place. So is free breakfast important to you? Would you like parking included in case you rent a car? It just goes on and on, right? So once you have all that figured out, you would just copy this, paste it into a Google Doc, and then send that doc to your assistant and say, here's what I'd like you to do. Or some people use like a Slack, right? You could paste it into a Slack message. I've even done 360 delegation over a voicemail message, believe it or not. I was in a situation, I was in a car, I didn't have access to my computer, and I had to send a 360D to my assistant. I literally called them and it went to their voicemail. So I just left the 360D in voice form via voicemail. So hopefully that's helpful.
Now, this is very helpful because, you know, once you do that one time, just for the booking, you know, delegation side. Okay, now they have all of your information for future bookings. All you have to do now is just like, okay, this is the location. I want to be by the water at this location, and just the minor things. It's amazing.
And so now imagine you have that for booking hotel rooms, for booking flights, for preparing you to speak at an event, for preparing guests for your podcast, customer, sending invoices to customers. Like, you build 360Ds, and before you know it, you have a whole playbook of how your assistant can basically run your business. and or other people in your business can run your business, so that it frees you up more and more and more. And this is how I've gotten to a point, Spencer. We've helped 800 entrepreneurs. I only helped the first 25. The last 775 clients we've had, it's been my team that's done the job for me.
That's amazing. No, that's amazing. No, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, because this is, if anyone, whoever's listening today I'm sure they have their minds blown, because what they can accomplish this year alone. You talked about increasing your income, increasing your effectiveness. It all is possible by delegation, and knowing just understanding the ways to delegate is half the battle, or 90% of the battle right there. So
totally agree.
Well, go ahead. I'll put these links in the podcast notes for sure, in the description, so people have that as they're going about this and listening to it. So go ahead.
If anyone wants to book a call to talk about us helping them to get an assistant, you can just go to greatassistant.com/apply. The word says apply, but it doesn't mean you're actually committed to getting an assistant from us or anything like that. It's just a URL. So greatassistant.com/apply. And if anyone is interested in staying in touch, you like how I think about business, I do write a newsletter at truthandmastery.com. If you remember all the way back to when I met God and I realized truth and mastery were the two most important things for me to pursue. Not fame, not fortune, but truth and mastery. Truthandmastery.com. A person can subscribe to my newsletter. I send out thoughts and tools like we've talked about today, kind of every few weeks or so. So we've got truthandmastery.com, greatassistant.com/apply. And then if a person wants this whole delegation method, they can go to greatassistant.com/3 steps. And that is the number 3 with the word steps. And that will link through to everything else.
That's amazing. Okay, well, I appreciate you. I'm going to ask you one last question before you go. Just, we like to do it for all of our guests. It's kind of, we do a quick lightning round, and we usually say it's sponsored by one of our companies, New Clean Commercial Cleaning and Commercial Cleaning Services. What if you had a recent book that you've read that's just kind of been aha moment for you, and you're just like, wow, this is amazing? What would your answer be for that one?
I have a modern book and I have an ancient book. So a modern book that has been really remarkable has been Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. Okay. And it talks all about how to bring just such an extraordinary experience for your customers that they become your raving fans and they send you tons of business. You don't have to spend a ton of money on advertising. And it honestly just feels good to make people feel special. So Unreasonable Hospitality is one I'm at like 99% of it done right now. And then an ancient book that I've really enjoyed studying recently is the Bhagavad Gita, which is ancient Vedic literature from India. And I grew up Catholic, so I've never even heard of Vedic literature. And in terms of just like a deep, profoundly moving spiritual text, it's 5,200 years old, so it actually predates Christianity. Wow. And I've really gotten a ton out of that just to kind of like soothe my soul, which has been really, really beautiful. So the Bhagavad Gita, nice. And there's specifically the one I'm reading is the interpretation, because it's written in Hindu or whatever, or Sanskrit, I should say. It's A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami is the interpretation that I'm listening to.
Wow, that's incredible. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for coming on the show, and appreciate your guidance for our audience today, because this is great. And those that are listening, definitely take Tim up on going to the website. What was it? greatassistant.com/apply. And I'll put that again on the link as well. And I'm telling you, it will change you. It'll change your business. It will make you more money. It'll make you happier.
All those things
matter.
That's the
big one. Yeah, that's right. So
thank you so much, Spencer.
Yeah, thank you. And as always, everyone else listening, be happy, be grateful, and find opportunities to serve others. Adios. See ya.
Congratulations on spending a couple of minutes getting a little bit smarter, having some fun, and supporting the Idaho business community. If you're feeling the love, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you are.